All right, we are going to be moving on to history now. So let's look at our schedule. For our schedule today, it looks like we're doing our final lesson. And it looks like I didn't change the lesson number. So let's change that now. So we're doing chapter 2, lesson 4, and then we're going to do our chapter 2 test tomorrow. After this week, next week, we're actually going to be moving on to science now. So we're going to be moving on to science unit 1. And so that's going to be a different book. If you don't have that book, no worries. Science, you can also find it in McGraw-Hill, that same website that you click on to go to your ELA stuff. All right. So this is going to be our last week in history for a little bit, and then we're going to move on to science. So let's go ahead and do chapter 2, people, places, and nature, lesson 4, our communities and resources. We're going to complete the e-text and the lesson review. Remember, those you do not need to turn in. And if you don't finish completing it, that's okay, because they are optional assignments. The only required thing that you have to do today is going to be your lesson quiz. All right, so let's go ahead and look at that. So we have our social science. I'm going to scroll to my programs. All of your quizzes for social science or history and math are going to be here. I'm going to click on the social studies, history, science, My World Interactive Grade 2. It's going to be that green picture. I'm going to go to chapter 2, lesson 4. And then we're going to click on the investigate student e-text with that book. It's going to open it up for us, and let's go ahead and read. Ooh, it doesn't work for me. All right, so remember, when it does something like that, you're just going to exit out, sign out, and then you're going to go back to Google Classroom and open it up in apps again. All right. The way that I do it is a little bit different. You would have to know your email address and login, which you can find if you go through Google, Miss Park's website. But the easiest way for you guys is just to keep exiting out and then logging back in with Google Apps. Chapter 2, lesson 4, investigate. All right, let's go ahead and read. Oh, I think I went to the wrong one. All right, here we go.
Lesson 4, Our Communities and Resources. Vocabulary, environment, urban, suburb, rural, academic vocabulary, resource. Unlock the big question. I will know ways that people change the land in their community.
We are going to
Jumpstart
activity. However, if you guys want to do that on your own, you're always more than welcome.
Urban environment. The air, land, water, and life around us is called the environment. It is everything that makes up where we live. This includes people, plants, animals, and buildings. People change the land where they live to meet their needs. They change it to make their lives better, too. A city and the places around it make up an urban environment. Here, people change the land for buildings and streets. They cut down trees and make the land flat. They build strong parts below the ground to support tall buildings called skyscrapers. Word-wise, compound words. What are two smaller words in skyscraper?
Sky.
What does each word mean? Many people move to the city and live in apartments. They enjoy restaurants, museums, plays, and parks. Many people work in the city. They may walk or ride bikes, or take a bus or subway to work. They care for the environment by not driving cars and making the air dirty. 1. Reading check. Use evidence from text. Highlight details about how people change the land to build an urban community.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that again. A city and the places around it make up an urban environment. Here, people change the land for buildings and streets. Okay, but how do they change the land? They cut down trees. Okay. They make the land flat. They build strong parts below the ground to support tall buildings called skyscrapers. So those are some ways that people create these suburbs or these urban communities.
Suburban environment. A suburb is a community that is near a city. A suburb has fewer people than a city, so it is less crowded.
So we are in Cerritos. So Cerritos is considered a suburb. We live near a big city. Our big cities are like Long Beach and Los Angeles. Those are when you go to like LA, downtown LA, or when you go to Long Beach, there's lots of buildings, there's lots of people. You might see people riding like the buses a lot. There's a lot of people on the streets. There's a lot of really tall buildings that people live in. We live near an urban community. Because we live near an urban community, we're called the suburbs. We live in a suburb where we're near a big city, but it's not as crowded.
There are also fewer tall buildings. Many people live in single-family houses. Children can walk to school. People can ride their bikes to the grocery store. People who live in many suburbs are close enough to a city to drive to work or to a museum. They are close to open space. It might be just a short drive to hike at a state park, or they might be able to go swimming or fishing in the ocean. People clear land to build suburbs. Look at the photo taken from above a California suburb. Notice the rows of houses on the land. These houses are close together, but each one still has a front and backyard. Some of the land around the houses is kept natural too, so there are lots of trees and green areas for children to play. In the suburbs, there are many streets and roads. Some roads lead to highways, bridges, and tunnels. They make it easy for people to travel through the suburbs and to nearby cities. 2. Reading check. Summarize. Write how people change and make good use of the land in a suburb.
Okay, so let's see. Let's reread. So it's near a city. They have lots of homes. They can drive to places. People clear land to build suburbs. All right, so write how people change and make good use of the land in a suburb. So they notice the rows of houses on the land. These houses are close together, but they also have some like trees and green areas to keep it natural. There are many streets and roads. Some lead to highways, bridges, and tunnels. They make it easy for people to travel. So write how people change and make good use of the land in a suburb. So houses are in rows, and there are still room for nature. Suburbs have many streets and roads to make it easy to travel. So if you guys ever notice when you're traveling to different places, you guys might go to different cities. You guys might live in Cerritos, but you might travel to, excuse me. You might travel to like Buena Park to go eat with your family, or you might travel to Anaheim to go to Disneyland, or you might travel to LA to see your grandma. It's very easy to get from one place to another in a suburb because we are very close to like freeways and different roads to get from one place to another.
Rural environment. A rural environment is made up of small towns and farms with some family-run stores. Fewer people live here than in a suburb or city. There is a lot of open space. In a rural environment, people change the land and use resources like water and soil. Writer Jack London, who lived near Glen Ellen, California, said of the soil, "Primary source. I believe the soil is our greatest asset. Benefit. Jack London, 1914. Quest connections. How are the types of environments alike and different?
All right, so we're going to go in breakout rooms right now to discuss that. How are the types of environments alike and different? Many farmers clear the land. Then they use the soil to plant seeds and grow crops for food. They supply water to the land so that the crops can grow. So here we see a rural community. It doesn't have a lot of people, and there's a lot of land, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of plants, there's a lot of soil. So few people live here. There's not that many towns. There's not that many people. There's not that many stores. There's just a lot of open space with lots of nature. Use evidence from the text. Highlight how farmers use and benefit from the land. So many farmers clear the land. Okay, so that's one of the things that farmers do. They use the soil to plant seeds and grow crops for food. They supply water to the land so that the crops can grow. So those are some of the ways that the farmers use the land so that they can grow all of these wonderful things. All right.
Moving to a new environment. Pretend that you are moving from a town to a city. You will want to learn about it first. You can use the internet. Type keywords like the name of the city. Look in the library too. Find books, maps, or photos that tell about the city. Lesson 4, check. 4. Compare and contrast. Write how land use is alike and different in urban, suburban, and rural environments.
Okay, so I'm going to list them in bullets. All right, so I'm going to use that bullet, the bullet list. So urban, there's lots of tall buildings and people. In a suburban, there's it's more like a small town near a big city with rows of houses. Think of rows of houses. In a big city, like if you ever go to LA, you don't really see too many rows of houses. You'll see a lot of like apartment buildings and big skyscrapers, buildings on top of each other. A suburban, it's near a big city and you'll see a lot of rows of houses. And then in the rural, think of like farmlands. All right.
5. Talk with a partner about ways people change the land.
So
6.
this one we're just discussing. So how do people change the land? In the urban communities, they build a lot of really tall buildings. In a suburban community, they make a lot of, and then also in urban communities, they make things very flat so that they can put as much stores and buildings there. In a suburban community, they create rows of houses, but they also keep a little bit of nature. They have, people who live in the suburbs, you usually have like a front yard and you also have a backyard. And then in a rural community, they make sure that the land has good soil, has good water so that they can grow a lot of plants and they can keep their animals there safely.
Understand the quest connections. Draw a picture of one type of environment. Use another sheet of paper.
We're going to skip that. If you want to do that, feel free to, and you can share it with me on Class Dojo if you want, but that is optional. All right, the next thing we have is going to be our lesson review. Our lesson review is going to be under synthesize. And here we have drag each picture to the box under the environment it matches. So we know that rural is going to be a big city. So it looks like there's lots of skyscrapers here. Oh, urban. We know urban. I'm so sorry. Rural is going to be not that many people. It's going to be like a farmland. And this one, it looks like you have just like a lot of green and maybe just like one home. And then the suburb is a place with mostly houses, and then it's very close to a nearby city. All right, that's it. And that's all for your review. Now what we're going to be doing is our lesson quiz. So let me go ahead and assign this for you guys. And this is the last lesson quiz before we take our chapter quiz tomorrow. All right, you guys are going to click on home and you'll find your test under home. I know some of you guys are saying you're having trouble finding it. So after class, I'll be going over where to find these quizzes and the stories. You can find skyscrapers, museums, and subways in an urban environment, like a big city. What would you find in a suburban environment? We would find neighborhoods and stores, just like where we live. We have a lot of friendly neighborhoods in Cerritos. Jana lives in a house near school. Her best friend lives down the street in a similar house. They ride their bikes to the park. Jana probably lives it sounds very similar to maybe where we would live, and we live in the suburbs. How do people change the land in a rural environment? So that's where farmers are. So, the first one says farmers use the soil to grow crops. Let's just make sure that's our best answer. People clear the land to build suburbs. Nope, that doesn't have to do with the rural. Builders create roads, bridges, and tunnels. That's more in suburban areas so that they can get to urban areas. Workers cut down trees to build apartments. You would see that more in either a suburb or an urban area. So it would be A, farmers. Last question. Some people in the city take care of the environment by driving cars. That wouldn't be taking care of the environment. Cutting down trees, that would not be taking care of the environment. We need the trees to take care of our environment. Riding bikes to work, that's a good one. That one is taking care of the environment because you're not taking a car, which uses a lot of fossil fuels, a lot of gas, and that can hurt our environment. So riding your bike is a very healthy and safe and natural way to help save the earth. Building skyscrapers, that wouldn't be taking care of our environment either. So riding your bike to work would be the best answer. All right, guys, once you're done, you're going to get your percentage. You're going to click on exit, go back to home, and make sure that there is 0 left. After you take this, you should have none left because you should have already done math earlier, and then you're going to do social science right now. All right, guys.